Faced with this rejection of their program by the major parties, the alliance finally joined with the nation's leading labor union, the Knights of Labor, and other reform groups, and created their own new party, the People's Party. Its supporters were soon dubbed Populists, and Populists embraced the label. By 1892, Populists had hammered out a platform calling for sweeping reforms. Populists demanded, quote, a national currency, safe, sound, and flexible, issued by the general government, unquote. In other words, the greenback system, which would take the country off the gold standard. They endorsed the sub-treasury plan. The platform called for a graduated income tax, which would place more of the nation's tax burden on the wealthy. Going a step beyond the idea of just regulating the railroads, Populists called for government ownership of the roads, arguing that railroads were essentially public utilities used and needed by all. Likewise, they called for government ownership of the telephone and telegraph systems, which by their very nature tended to be monopolistic. In hopes of curbing political corruption, Populists called for the direct election of U.S. senators by popular vote, rather than being elected by state legislatures as they were done then. And to create a more level playing field for industrial workers, they demanded collective bargaining rights for organized labor. Texans played a prominent role in fashioning these demands, but in the meantime, they also had a state level party to build. Now, this wasn't as simple as it might sound. At the state party's founding convention in Dallas in 1891, delegates immediately confronted the single most fraught issue that they would face. What would be the party's approach toward African Americans? Though we tend to think of the post-Reconstruction era as a time when blacks were stripped of political power and the structures of the Jim Crow system were being constructed, Black Texans still voted in very large numbers in the 1890s. Their votes mattered. The chair of that first state convention, Harrison Sterling Price Ashby, better known by his nickname Stump Ashby, tackled the issue head on, declaring to the mostly white delegates there, although there were some blacks, that, quote, African Americans are in the ditch just like we are. We want to do good to every citizen of the country, and he is a citizen just as much as we are, and the party that acts on that fact will gain the colored vote of the South, unquote. The delegates then went on to elect 2 African Americans to the party's state executive committee, and blacks had representation on the party's governing body for the remainder of the People's Revolt.